So by now, many people have heard that Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz's 56-year-old daughter, Malika Shabazz, passed away on Monday, November 22nd. She was found in her apartment by her daughter. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. There are not a lot of details. The story broke while we were live on the air yesterday. The Griot.com has a good article dealing with this, and they talked about it on. We've heard about it in the news today. They talked about it on the Black News Channel. We know that Bernice King, daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, did a post on social media today about that as well. We shared it on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. So this is more sad news, and we know that this is on the heels of two men who were convicted back in 1966 of the assassination of Malcolm X. We know they were vindicated. Last week, we covered that extensively here on this show, Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam. Okay, so we'll talk some about what we know so far. The police are saying it does not appear it's foul play. So far, it appears that it is the cause of death has not yet been determined. Okay, Malcolm X's daughter, Malika Shabazz, found dead in her Brooklyn home, police officials. So this story broke while we were live on the air yesterday, and we shared with you what we knew. And then we're going to do an update on today's show. All right, so we'll talk about that. And then, like I said, this is a big news day today. Kevin Strickland. We've heard about Kevin Strickland's case, and Kevin Strickland was exonerated after 43 years in prison in one of the longest wrongful conviction cases in U.S. history, and one of the wrongful longest conviction cases in U.S. history. Okay. Kevin Strickland was convicted by an all-white jury in 1978 in Kansas City, Missouri, and has spent over 4 decades in prison. All right. We're going to talk about this story. There's a big article from the Washington Post, and we talked about we posted this story on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. As soon as the story broke, I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. So I get news alerts all throughout the day and night, for that matter. So I got a news alert yesterday while we were live on the air that Malcolm X's daughter passed away. That's how I knew about it, because I get alerts all throughout the day and night. I've been doing radio 11 years, so there's been numerous breaking news stories that I've broken on the air. One of them was about Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump. I actually broke that story on the air for 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. Kevin Strickland exonerated after 43 years in one of the longest wrongful conviction cases in U.S. history. Okay, so we'll talk about this as well. Now, and I'm going to share a clip from ABC News that gives some background information on this case also. Now, one of the most, I'm hesitant to say one of the most depressing things, because there's a number of depressing things in this whole story here. We're happy he's exonerated. He should have never been convicted. But based upon Missouri state law, unfortunately, he won't be able to get any type of compensation for being wrongfully imprisoned. I know it sounds crazy, but once again, This is an example of how elections have consequences and how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement, and how politics impacts every aspect of our life. This is an example of that. This is the law in Missouri. Okay, so we'll discuss this as well. Okay, now, so we have that story. The Groveland Four. Okay, the Groveland Four. These were 4 African-American men accused in a 1949 rape of a white woman. They have been exonerated, and this was in Florida. Okay, during the Jim Crow era. This was a big story yesterday. We just ran out of time on yesterday's show and did not have time to talk about this case, but I posted about it on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. So you can check it out there if you missed it. A lot of people have been commenting on the story. So we'll squeeze that in. We'll talk about that on today's show also. And then lastly, let me see. So we have day 12 in the Michael Bryan murder trial and the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. The jury is in deliberations right now. We'll discuss that. Kevin Strickland, Malikah Shabazz, and the Groveland Four. Okay. All right. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Mental health and well-being have long been a taboo subject in the so-called African-American community. So I enlisted the help of mental health experts, thought leaders, and activists to help kill the ghost of Willie Lynch and heal from post-traumatic slave syndrome.
We experience trauma a lot of times on a subconscious level. So sometimes something happens to us and we know that it's traumatizing, but we don't really recognize the extent of the trauma.
We are emotionally constipated and emotionally obese because, again, all the things that we experienced in childhood, we've suffocated and we stored in our body.
It's a time to kill and it's a time to heal. We've been haunted by the ghost of Willie Lynch and his doctrine of self-refueling trauma for too long. It's time for Willie to die. Die, Willie.
Stop Speed the Ghost LOXD block. It's time to kill the ghost of Willie Lynch and get out the matrix. Check out my man Ron Life Speaks at diewillie.com.
Kwanzaa is coming, and the KwanzaaShop.com has all of your Kwanzaa needs. Order your Kwanzaa set today, which includes a kinara, candles, a mat, a cup, the African American flag, and a basket. Visit the KwanzaaShop.com, the KwanzaaShop.com. They have kinara sets, which include a candle holder, candles, a mat, and a cup. Kwanzaa is December 26th through January the 1st. Add the early bird discount code for 10% off your order placed before November 28th. Visit the KwanzaaShop.com and place your order today. The KwanzaaShop.com has all of your Kwanzaa needs to celebrate this African American Pan-African holiday. The KwanzaaShop.com.
African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Unfortunately, many people confuse what racism is. Racism is a power structure. It was laws and policies that put us in this predicament. It's going to be laws and policies that take us out. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the compass of his or her actions because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know.
We have it all on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021, and we are live. Now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with. It's based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Okay, so we're going to call in numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. We're going to jump into this. I'm getting ready to send you this information here, Shakita. Okay, so we're going to go to clip 4. We're going to go to clip 4, number first, from the Black News Channel, Malika Shabazz. So we got while we were live on the air last night, this story broke, and I wanted to check a couple of sources before I started talking about it on the air. NBC Channel 4 reported yesterday Malcolm X's daughter, Malika Shabazz, was found dead in her Brooklyn home. The city's medical examiner responded to the scene and said the incident was not deemed suspicious. A cause of death has yet to be determined. Picture of Malika Shabazz also from 2015. Now, Malika Shabazz is, we know, the daughter of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz. She was 56 years old. She was found unconscious and unresponsive inside her home on East 28th Street in Midwood just before 4:30 p.m. on Monday, November 22nd. The police officials told NBC New York. She was later pronounced dead. The city's medical examiner responded to the scene and said the incident was not deemed suspicious. A cause of death has yet to be determined. Malika Shabazz was one of a set of twins and one of the 6 siblings of all daughters of Malcolm X, Malcolm and Betty Shabazz. And she was born after actually, Dr. Betty Shabazz was pregnant with the twins when Malcolm was assassinated, February 21st, 1965. So now there's a good article from thegrio.com. Okay. There's a good article from thegrio.com on Malika Shabazz also. And we could try to pull this up here. We got this here from the Grio. And there was we shared the social media post from Bernice King as well, daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Betty Shabazz. This piece here from the Grio, we're going to go to clip 4 in just a second, Shakita. This piece here from the Grio, Malika Shabazz, daughter of Malcolm X, found dead in an apartment. Now here is a picture of Dr. Betty Shabazz and the daughters back in 1992, November 16th, 1992, at a screening of the film Malcolm X. All right. Screening of the film Malcolm X. Okay. I remember when Malcolm X came out, I went to go see it in the theater. That was a phenomenal movie. Okay. There was some criticisms about the film. You know, Muhammad Ali wasn't portrayed in the movie, different things like this, but it was a mind-blowing movie. Okay. And around the same time the movie came out, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Police confirmed with the news outlet that, let me see, hold on, back up here. Okay, ABC News. We shared the story from ABC News on yesterday's show. Malika Shabazz, the daughter of civil rights leader Malcolm X, found dead. They should also say daughter of Dr. Betty Shabazz as well. You notice I add that in. All right, it wasn't just Malcolm. She was the daughter of Dr. Betty Shabazz also. Police confirmed with the news outlet ABC News that Shabazz's body was found inside her residence just before 5 p.m. Her death is considered not to be suspicious, and the cause of death has yet to be determined. Malika Shabazz and her twin sister, Malak, were born just months after their famed father was assassinated, Malcolm and his wife, Betty Shabazz, had 4 other daughters. Malika and Malak are the couple's youngest children. Okay. So when you look at African-American media, see, they're going to talk about Dr. Betty Shabazz. They're going to talk about the other children, things like this. You get more details on something like this than in mainstream media. Bernice King, the daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, because in my social media post today, when I shared the post from Bernice King, I said daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, because last time I checked, men don't give birth to babies. Bernice King mourned the passing of Malika Shabazz in a tweet Monday night. Here's the actual tweet from Bernice King, and we'll share this also here. I'm deeply saddened by the death of Malika Shabazz. My heart goes out to her family, the descendants of Dr. Betty Shabazz and Malcolm X. Dr. Shabazz was pregnant with Malika and her twin sister Malak when Brother Malcolm was assassinated. Be at peace, Malika. Now, for those that don't know, and you watch this show, you know this, but those who may be tuning in for the first time, now here's a picture of Dr. Betty Shabazz with the twins. Dr. King and Malcolm X were both 39 years old when they were assassinated. Okay, those that watch this show, you know, we've talked about that before, and we talked about the book Martin Malcolm in America, a Dream or a Nightmare, and we dealt with how Malcolm joins the civil rights movement when he officially separates from the Nation of Islam. We've gone through all that and dealt with his speeches and talked about June 28, 1964, when he delivers his By Any Means Necessary speech and announcing the formation of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And we talk about the Battle of the Bullet, and we go through and talking about and deal with how Malcolm was talking about registering the vote as independent voters and all of that. Okay. And Malcolm going to speak to SNCC for Fannie Lou Hamer, and Malcolm meeting with Coretta Scott King in early 1965, wanted to meet with Dr. King, but Dr. King's in jail. We dealt with all that here on this show. The news of Malika Shabazz's death comes just a few days after 2 men who were charged and served prison time for Malcolm X's murder were exonerated. We dealt with that extensively here on this show. And, you know, we rebroadcast these shows on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. So be sure to subscribe to both of those and turn on live notifications so you know when we go live as well. And this deals with Muhammad A. Aziz, formerly known as Norman 3X Butler, and Khalil Islam, formerly known as Thomas 15X Johnson. All right, so read this piece here from thegrio.com as well. Good reporting from the Griot. Okay, African-American media is very much needed. The Griot is African-American owned and operated, owned by Byron Allen. All right, I want to go to this clip. Let's go to clip number 4, Shakita. This is from Black News Tonight, Dr. Mark Lamont Hill. Okay, take it off mute. Clip number 4, I emailed it to you. All right. Okay. All right. Play it once it's ready.
Joining me on Black News Tonight, I'm Mark Lamont Hill. I start the show off with some very sad news. Malika Shabazz, the youngest daughter of Malcolm X, has passed away. The 56-year-old was found unconscious Monday inside her Brooklyn home. NYPD says her daughter is the one who found her. An official cause of death is pending, but police believe that it was of natural causes. Malika is one of 6 of the civil rights icon's daughters. Her death coming after 2 men were exonerated last week, the death of her father. Condolences poured in on social media from people like New York Mayor Bill de Blasio and Martin Luther King's daughter, Bernice King.
All right.
Coming now to the trial
All right,
of
pause
three
it there.
white men charged in the...
Okay, pause it there. Okay, you can stop the clip. Pause it there. All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to go to clip number one here in just a second, dealing with Kevin Strickland. Clip number one from ABC News. Okay, let's go to another story. We're coming up on a break here. Kevin Strickland. Now, I've been following this case. And we got the news that we were waiting for today. All right. Kevin Strickland is exonerated after 43 years in prison. We're going to give you some background information here on the other side of the break. But Washington Post has a big article about this. And when we see these exoneration cases, right, the majority of these people that are wrongfully convicted are African Americans. And I'm not saying white people are not wrongfully convicted, but when we go look at these stories, the majority of them are African Americans who are wrongfully convicted. Kevin Strickland, exonerated after 43 years in prison, convicted by an all-white jury in 1978 of triple murder in Kansas City, Missouri. He spent over 4 decades in prison for a crime the evidence shows he did not commit. For the first time in more than 4 decades in prison, Kevin Strickland allowed himself to make a wish list of all the things that he would do if he were to be exonerated for a triple murder he has long said he did not commit. There are 2 places that Kevin Strickland, a 62-year-old African-American man who was convicted by an all-white jury in 1979 and sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole for 50 years. He hopes to see 2 things. He hopes to see the ocean, which he has never visited in person, and his mother's grave. The ocean, which he has never visited in person, and his mother's grave. We'll deal with Kevin Strickland's exoneration on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Kwanzaa is coming, and the KwanzaaShop.com has all of your Kwanzaa needs. Order your Kwanzaa set today, which includes a kinara, candles, a mat, a cup, the African American flag, and a basket. Visit the KwanzaaShop.com, thekwanzaashop.com. They have kinara sets, which include a candle holder, candles, a mat, and a cup. Kwanzaa is December 26th through January the 1st. Add the early bird discount code for 10% off your order placed before November 28th. Visit the KwanzaaShop.com and place your order today. The KwanzaaShop.com has all of your Kwanzaa needs to celebrate this African American Pan-African holiday. The KwanzaaShop.com.
Mental health and well-being have long been a taboo subject in the so-called African American community. So I enlisted the help of mental health experts, thought leaders, and activists to help kill the ghost of Willie Lynch and heal from post-traumatic slave syndrome.
We experience trauma a lot of times on a subconscious level. So sometimes something happens to us and we know that it's traumatizing, but we don't really recognize the extent of the trauma.
We are emotionally constipated and emotionally obese because, again, all the things that we experienced in childhood, we've suffocated and we stored in our body.
It's a time to kill and it's a time to heal. We've been haunted by the ghost of Willie Lynch and his doctrine of self-refueling trauma for too long. It's time for Willie to die. Die, Willie.
Stop for the Ghost LOXD block. It's time to kill the ghost of Willie Lynch and get out the Matrix. Check out my man Ron Life Speaks at diewillie.com.
910, the Superstation, the oldest radio station in town since 1922.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021, and we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay, so right before the break, we were talking about Kevin Strickland. Also, if you'd like this type of information, you can support the African History Network. $ the AHN Show through Cash App. $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me /the AHN Show, paypal.me /the AHN Show. We're here 6 days a week. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. These other ones here are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. When you go to ours, it'll show my name. It says Michael, shows my picture there, and our tag is $ the AHN Show, SHOW. Okay, let's go back to this. We're going to go to clip. We're going to clip one here in just a second, Shakita. Okay, so Kevin Strickland, we got the news today that many of us have been waiting for in this case. Another African-American man wrongly convicted by an all-white jury. 1979. He was 18 years old. And here's a picture of Kevin Strickland. That is from November 8th in an evidentiary hearing. Okay. So Kevin Strickland said there are two places that he wants to go that he has not been able to go before: to the ocean and to his mother's grave. He said, quote, "If we don't stop at the grave site first, I'm going to get out of the car, and I'm going to try to make it there on my hands and knees," end quote. Kevin Strickland told the Washington Post. Now, Strickland will get that opportunity. A judge on Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021, exonerated Kevin Strickland after more than 43 years in prison, making his case the longest confirmed wrongful conviction case in Missouri's history. Okay, which is part of the, Missouri stayed loyal to the Union. They were a slave-holding state. During the Civil War, Missouri stayed loyal to the Union. They were one of those border states. Missouri, Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, they all stayed loyal to the Union. They were allowed to keep their slaves. Even after the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863, that's why people need to go read it. It did not free the slaves. And just for the sake of history, Missouri comes into the Union in 1820 as a slaveholding state, also part of the Missouri Compromise of 1820. He was released shortly after the judge. Longest confirmed wrongful conviction case in Missouri's history, and one of the longest standing such convictions in the nation's history. Kevin Strickland was released shortly after the judge issued his decision. Now, Kevin Strickland was convicted in 1978 of the murders of Sherry Black, 22 years old, Larry Ingram, 21, and John Walker, 20 years old, even though no physical evidence linked him to the crime scene. Now, family members provided alibis, and the admitted killers said that Kevin Strickland was not there. Now, the case was built on the testimony of Cynthia Douglas, the sole survivor and eyewitness, who later attempted multiple times to recant her testimony because she said she was pressured by police. Cynthia Douglas, the sole survivor and eyewitness, later attempted multiple times to recant her testimony because she said she was pressured by police. Now, Kevin Strickland was convicted by an all-white jury. Under these strict circumstances, the court's confidence in Strickland's conviction is so undermined that it cannot stand, and the judgment of conviction must be set aside, end quote, wrote Judge James Welsh on Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. Quote, the state of Missouri shall immediately discharge Kevin Bernard from its custody, end quote. Now, I want to go to this clip here. This is from ABC News from November 11th, 2021. This gives some background history on Kevin Strickland's case. Let's go to clip number 1, Shakita.
Now to a major development in a case that we've been tracking for months here. 62-year-old Kevin Strickland has languished in a Missouri prison for more than 4 decades for a crime he says he did not commit. The local prosecutor agrees that he's innocent, but local laws and the governor and attorney general there have prevented Strickland from pleading his case until now. Kevin Strickland has been waiting for this day for 43 years.
Mr. Strickland, how are you feeling today?
Strickland describes himself as anxious as he finally gets his day in a Kansas City court. On Monday, Strickland took to the stand to testify at the start of an evidentiary hearing that could give him the ability to walk out of prison a free man after decades for a crime he says he didn't commit.
If he pled guilty to this triple murder, is that right?
I know about that.
And I guess I just have to ask, why didn't you plead guilty?
I wasn't about to plead guilty to a crime I had absolutely nothing to do with. I wasn't going to do it.
But you were facing the death penalty, is that right?
At 18 years old. And I knew the system worked, so I knew I would be vindicated. I would not take a plea deal and admit to something I did not do.
Back in May, Jackson County prosecutor Jean Peters Baker announced that her office found Strickland innocent of the triple homicide he was convicted of in 1979.
But Mr. Strickland, I am profoundly sorry for the harm that has come to you.
But at that time, Missouri law prevented her from being able to release him or bring his case before a judge. We spoke with Baker back in June.
Let's just call it what it is. This is wrong. And everyone that works in this system must find a way to do the right thing now. The right thing is getting Mr. Strickland out.
Now Strickland is the first exoneration case being held in the state after a new law passed in August, which allowed Baker to file a petition on his behalf.
Mr. Strickland, you have a lot riding on this hearing, is that right?
The remainder of my life.
It's been like a heartbreaking for us. It's devastating. Strickland's family, who attended the proceedings, is hopeful he'll be vindicated and perhaps home in time for Thanksgiving.
We've been sort of set aside for so long, you know, and it seems like there's so much bureaucracy involved.
It's been a hard-fought road to get to this point. Strickland was supposed to receive an evidentiary hearing on August 11th. When we spoke to him in June, he was hopeful he'd see his ailing mother once he got out. It's going to be the first thing you do if and when you get out.
Well, I mean, I hate to speak to a 62-year-old man say this, but I'm a mama's boy, and I got to go see mama. I got to go my whole mama family, yeah.
But Strickland never got that wish. Procedural hurdles caused his case to be delayed and later dismissed. His mother passed away on August 21st.
Even from that day, right, back in June, when it looked like things were going to go much more quickly, has been a roller coaster. The Attorney General filed several writs. That hearing got moved. The Attorney General then filed more writs saying that the entire bench, like all of the judges in the circuit court, could not hear Mr. Strickland's case.
Missouri Governor Mike Parson has issued at least 168 pardons since taking office in 2018, including for Mike and Patricia McCloskey, the St. Louis couple who pleaded guilty to charges stemming from this incident where they waved guns at protesters outside their home in the aftermath of George Floyd's death. But the governor would not budge on Strickland's case, even with the local prosecutor and other state lawmakers calling for his release.
There have been times where the governor has said, well, that he hadn't seen a reason for him to jump the line. There was a backlog of pardon applications.
The Attorney General's office believes Strickland's conviction should be upheld. His case for exoneration largely hangs on this crucial piece of evidence.
The most important piece of evidence was a recantation of a witness. She has since died, but she really did a good job documenting her recantation.
The ex-husband of that witness, Cynthia Douglas, got into...
Okay, pause right there. Just back it up about 30 seconds to a minute. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. Now, once again, this also deals with who's in elected office. Governor Mike Parson, Republican, needs to be voted out of office. And you have Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, Republican, who is now running for U.S. Senate. He believes Kevin Strickland committed the murders. Okay, this is an example of how elections have consequences. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. This is the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Kwanzaa is coming, and the KwanzaaShop.com has all of your Kwanzaa needs. Order your Kwanzaa set today, which includes a kinara, candles, a mat, a cup, the African American flag, and a basket. Visit the KwanzaaShop.com, the KwanzaaShop.com. They have kinara sets, which include a candle holder, candles, a mat, and a cup. Kwanzaa is December 26th through January the 1st. Add the early bird discount code for 10% off your order placed before November 28th. Visit the KwanzaaShop.com and place your order today. The KwanzaaShop.com has all of your Kwanzaa needs to celebrate this African American Pan-African holiday. The KwanzaaShop.com.
Black on Purpose Television Network. Yes, Black on Purpose Television Network. All black, all positive, all the time. The largest black-owned streaming television network in the world. Bringing our people together worldwide. Controlling our messages, our stories, our way. Black TV the way it should be. Black music, Black history, and more. 30 plus channels, thousands of shows. Black on Purpose Television Network. Subscribe now.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021, and we're live. Right before the break, we were talking about the story of Kevin Strickland. He has been exonerated. He's been in prison 43 years for a triple murder he was convicted of in 1978, convicted by an all-white jury. Okay. I want to go back to this clip from ABC News. Let's go back to the clip, Shakita.
This fiery exchange with the AG's office after testifying that Douglas maintained Strickland's innocence until her death in 2015.
It's your job is to trick, confuse, and belittle and discredit me. But you came in the door and told me that that's not why you were here. And I'm going to tell you something. That's your job. Yes, ma'am.
I said, if any of my questions confuse you, let me know. On Wednesday, the exoneration hearing wrapped with these closing arguments.
The jury that heard that evidence found Mr. Strickland guilty. There's not enough evidence to set that aside.
I'm hopeful for what's going to come next. I now trust in you to return just a fraction of what we've all lost, what Mr. Strickland lost, by bringing him home. Strickland's fate now rests in the hands of Judge James Welch, who's expected to rule later this month. Any bucket list item that you dream of being able to do?
I want to go to the ocean. You know, I've never been on a beach. No, not even a man-made beach. I want to go out far in the ocean where you can't see any land, any direction. And not just go out there, but get in that water.
All these years later, as he awaits yet another decision from the court, Strickland still has faith that one day he'll get to see the ocean.
Mr. Strickland, what's your confidence level on how things are going so far? You're hopeful?
A huge thanks to our partners at Kansas City KMBC for their help with this story.
Okay, pause it right there. Okay, so very quickly here, we're going to go to clip 2 next. Shakita from the from KansasCity.com. We're going to that in just a second here. Now, it's something very important to look at. There's a lot of important things in this article. This is one I want to draw your attention to because we're pressed for time. While legal experts and elected officials in both parties, Democrat and Republican, supported Kevin Strickland's case for exoneration, top Republicans in Missouri pushed back. Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmitt, who is running for U.S. Senate in 2022, said he believed Kevin Strickland committed the murders. This is an example of how elections have consequences. He's the Attorney General in Missouri. Do you want him to be a U.S. Senator? And he's going to be a Republican? Andrew Clark, an Assistant Attorney General, argued that Kevin Strickland not only received a fair trial in 1979 by an all-white jury, but has, quote, worked to evade responsibility, end quote, for decades. This is what the Assistant Attorney General of Missouri said, Andrew Clark. Then we go to the wonderful governor of Missouri, Republican Governor Mike Parson. Governor Mike Parson, Republican, agreed with them, with the Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmitt and the Assistant Attorney General of Missouri, Andrew Clark. And he said, and he said before Kevin Strickland was exonerated, that pardoning Kevin Strickland would not be a priority. This is what Governor Mike Parson said. Not long afterward, Governor Mike Parson pardoned the Republican Bonnie and Clyde, Mark and Patricia McCloskey, a white couple who gained national notoriety for brandishing guns at peaceful social justice protesters in St. Louis last year and pleaded guilty to firearms charges. He gave them a pardon, but not Kevin Strickland. And they wound up speaking at the Republican National Convention, and they're lauded as heroes, like Kyle Rittenhouse is lauded as heroes by Republicans and the people on the right and extremists, all this nonsense. Okay, keep playing around. All you have to do is study what happened after Reconstruction ended the domestic terrorism in this country. And you can see a direct line to Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898. And even during Reconstruction, Opelousas Massacre, 1868, Vicksburg Massacre, 1874, Clinton, Mississippi Riot, 1875. There's a direct line between that and the domestic terrorism, January 6, 2021, and what's taking place right now. Okay, so those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a few minutes, and we're going to squeeze this last story here dealing with the Groveland Four. And I'm going to play an excerpt from what happened today. And you're going to hear the prosecutor. So KansasCity.com has this article. Now, one of the many sad parts of the story. Okay, this is another example of how Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and understanding that laws and policies shape every aspect of our life. If we look at KansasCity.com, look at this piece from KansasCity.com about what happened today in Kevin Strickland. Quote, I have nothing, end quote. Kevin Strickland will be freed, but won't get a dime from Missouri because of Missouri state law. People, we have no idea of how laws impact every aspect of our life, but calling the radio shows every day complaining about the negative effects of laws. Kevin Strickland, exonerated, spent 42 years in a Missouri prison for a crime that he and prosecutors say he did not commit. Prosecutors argued in a 25-page motion that Strickland's innocence is, quote, clear and convincing. Okay, now, Judge James Welch ordered his release of Kevin Strickland, 62, after Jackson County prosecutors using a new state law, once again, goes back to laws, using a new state law, argued he was innocent in a 1978 triple murder in Kansas City and should not remain in custody a day longer. In Missouri, the wrongfully convicted are always spit out of the system with nothing from the government that imprisoned them. The wrongfully convicted in the state of Missouri are always released from the system with nothing from the government that imprisoned them. Instead, they rely on nonprofit organizations and other exonerees to get back on their feet post-conviction, lawyers say. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting. We're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. Okay, stand by, everybody. Stand by.
Mental health and well-being have long been a taboo subject in the so-called African-American community. So I enlisted the help of mental health experts, thought leaders, and activists to help kill the ghost of Willie Lynch and heal from post-traumatic slave syndrome.
We experience trauma a lot of times on a subconscious level. So sometimes something happens to us and we know that it's traumatizing, but we don't really recognize the extent of the trauma.
We are emotionally constipated and emotionally obese because, again, all the things that we experienced in childhood, we've suffocated and we stored in our bodies.
It's a time to kill and it's a time to heal. We've been haunted by the ghost of Willie Lynch and his doctrine of self-refueling trauma for too long. It's time for Willie to die. Die, Willie.
Stop Speed the Ghost LOXD block. It's time to kill the ghost of Willie Lynch and get out the matrix. Check out my man Ron Life Speaks at diewillie.com.
Gain knowledge in minutes from insightful summaries of progressive and socially conscious books. Blacklisted gives you access to curated content that'll satisfy your curiosity to learn and understand different perspectives. Empower yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. It's easy to read or listen to on the go. Blacklisted. Empower yourself. Start your free trial today.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. All right. So we were talking about Kevin Strickland, and in Missouri, if you're wrongfully convicted, like in the situation of Kevin Strickland and later exonerated, you can't sue the state. Okay, you can't sue the state and get compensation, etc. All right, and the law has to be changed in Missouri. In Missouri, the wrongfully convicted are almost always spit out of the system with nothing from the government that imprisoned them. Instead, they rely on nonprofit organizations and other exonerees to get back on their feet, post-conviction, lawyers say. That's because Missouri's compensation law only allows for payments to prisoners who prove their innocence through a specific DNA testing statute, who prove their innocence through a specific DNA testing statute, which once again deals with law, written by lawmakers who were voted into office. That was not the case for Kevin Strickland or most exonerees across America. Unlike guilty prisoners, a parole officer will not help Kevin Strickland find counseling, housing, or work. Okay, because he's not being paroled, he's being exonerated from prison because he was wrongfully convicted. And unlike exonerees in some other states, he will not be eligible through a compensation package for social services, such as participating in the state's health care program. This deals with state law. This deals with state law in Missouri. Unlike guilty prisoners, a parole officer will not help Kevin Strickland find counseling, housing, or work. And unlike exonerees in some other states, he will not be eligible through a compensation package for social services, such as participating in the state's health care program. Kevin Strickland previously told the Kansas City Star that he plans to stay with one of his brothers for a short time. During an interview with ABC News, he quipped about having so little that he might use a cardboard box to, quote, get up under a bridge somewhere, end quote. The reporter asked if Kevin Strickland was serious. He replied, I mean, what do I have? He now uses a wheelchair. He said, quote, if they would tell me to roll out now, they'd take this chair. I'd have to crawl out. I would have to crawl out of the front door. I have nothing. I have nothing. Here's a picture of him in the wheelchair. Sean O'Brien, a University of Missouri, Kansas City law professor who has helped free innocent prisoners, said Missouri should adopt a compensation law. Once again, dealing with laws, Missouri should adopt a compensation law similar to the one in neighboring Kansas, which in 2018 passed a measure making the wrongfully convicted eligible to receive $65,000 in compensation for each year they were incarcerated. So if he had been incarcerated in nearby Kansas, in nearby Kansas, he would get $65,000 for each year he was in prison. For 43 years he's in prison. But since he was in prison in Missouri, he gets nothing because of Missouri's dumbass state law. They talked about this on Roland Martin and the Filter today. Roland did a really good segment dealing with Kevin Strickland today. For Kevin Strickland, that law would have made him eligible in the law in Kansas would have made him eligible for more than $2.7 million. In other recent exonerations in the area, Kansas paid Lamont McIntyre $1.55 million for serving 23 years for 2 murders he did not commit in Kansas City, Kansas. Okay, nearby. Now, he was convicted, Kevin Strickland was convicted in Missouri, nearby, next door, Missouri. Okay, in this case, Lamont McIntyre served 23 years for 2 murders he did not commit in Kansas, Kansas City, Kansas, the state of Kansas. He received $1.55 million because of Kansas state law. Local attorneys say they tend to see Kansas exonerees fare better than those in Missouri. In the Show Me state, quote, if exonerees are doing well, it's in spite of the system, not because of it, end quote, said O'Brien, who has worked with exonerees for 17 years. In Missouri, the only way Kevin Strickland will receive compensation is if lawmakers pass a bill ordering the state to pay him, which once again deals with law. Legal experts say, which once again deals with law. That's why it's important who you vote for in your state legislature and your governor. There are no perfect candidates, but there's some horrible candidates, and a lot of them in office in Missouri, in other states also. Exonerees can also sue, but they have to show that police or prosecutors acted in bad faith, which is an uphill battle. Instead, Kevin Strickland will rely on an online fundraiser that had as of recently raised about $50,000. That's around $900 for each year. He was behind bars, donated by everyday citizens, is donated to by everyday citizens. Okay. I'm sure after word gets out about this, that more people are going to donate. In a previous interview with The Star, Jackson County prosecutor Gene Peters Baker said there is no doubt Missouri should broaden its compensation law. There must be a better model, she said, than providing exonerees nothing. There must be a better model than providing exonerees nothing, especially when the system knows it made the mistake. Okay, well, especially when you railroaded by an all-white jury, and then, you know, this is just a total miscarriage of justice. I mean, this is like Muhammad A. Aziz and Khalil Islam wrongfully convicted for the assassination of Malcolm X. And there was evidence that most likely would have exonerated them at their trial that was withheld by the FBI and New York City Police Department. Okay, so we'll post a link here to this article, and they have the link in here to the fundraiser for Kevin Strickland, so you can donate to that if you want to. Okay, let's continue here. Okay, so I wanted to go to what happened today. Jackson County's prosecutors have determined that Kevin Strickland, who spent 40 plus years in prison for 1978 murder, is innocent. The Midwest Innocence Project has filed a petition to overturn the conviction. I want to go to, because I think this is from today. Hold on, let me cue this up. Okay, it's playing the ad. We get past that ad. Okay, next we're going to what happened in court today. The jury is deliberating in the Michael Bryan murder trial in dealing with the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. Okay, let's go to this clip here. Hold on. I want to go to this.
Today we have filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus to the Missouri Supreme Court asking him to overturn his conviction because he is actually innocent. And we are not taking this to court with just our word for it. After review by the Conviction Integrity Unit, and you will hear from later, the Jackson County prosecutor has also determined that Mr. Strickland is innocent. And every official presented with the materials has agreed that his conviction should be overturned. Because of that, I'm here advocating for Mr. Strickland's freedom and that his conviction should be vacated
Most importantly, though, I'm advocating that this man must be freed immediately. My job is to protect the innocent. And often prosecutors show hubris, right? You've probably seen me show some of that from time to time. And today, my job is to apologize. It is important to recognize when the system has made wrongs. And what we did in this case was wrong. So to Mr. Strickland, I am profoundly sorry. I am profoundly sorry for the harm that has come to you. It is not, however, just Mr. Strickland that I owe an apology to. It is to the victims' families in this case, to the victim Larry Ingram and his family, to Sherry Black and her family, to John Walker and his family, and even to Cynthia Douglas and her family. She too was a victim. I suppose that I could stop there, but harms like this extend beyond criminal defendants and those with the title of victim. It goes to the broader community. And to that end, I want to tell this community that I represent that I find this mistake in this system to be profound, to be one that I should take every ounce of energy I have to correct. I am sorry for this mistake made by this system.
There unfortunately is no timeline when these filings happen, right? So the next steps will be up to the Missouri Supreme Court, what those steps are and what they look like. So.
How often does something, well, you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to add, Mr. Strickland is one of the few, I think, that was convicted under this Hard 50 rule in Missouri. And so there is a potential for his release, I think, under that Hard 50 rule, having served 43 years. So some of that is still in question about, how that time gets compounded. But I think what's clear, Mr. Strickland has made very clear, he seeks full exoneration rather than just release. I think that I certainly owed him that phone call, and I believe how I'd describe it is he gave me a lot of grace in receiving that call from me from this office. He didn't have to. So I guess that's what I would say. Yeah.
If you have all this overwhelming evidence to say that he's innocent, what is the holdup? Why is he still there?
It actually goes back a little bit to the question of, if it's so difficult, why do it? I think there's a lot of things that we can learn, which is also, why is the process so difficult and does it have to be? One of the things we talk about a lot in our office is a law was passed back in 1996, which was called the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, which made all these technicalities that kept people out of being able to file. And so now if they file, it's an argument about whether or not they even get to be in court and not about the issues that they are raising, right? So in the terms of Mr. Strickland, he's filed other things before to say on his own, pro se, I'm innocent, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. And the argument is always, well, do you even get to be in court? And not, does this evidence show you're innocent, or is this the right thing to do? So I think that there are things that we can be thinking about, which is how do we change a system to get to the merits, to get to what matters, right? And make it more effective for what we're looking to do.
Okay, so that was I'm not sure the exact date of that video, but that was the Jackson County prosecutors, and they were talking about filing to have Kevin Strickland freed. Now, just so people understand, they were not the prosecutors that convicted him back in 1979. Just so people understand. Okay. So read this article here from from KansasCity.com. We'll read the one from Washington Post, and also the one from KansasCity.com. KansasCity.com, name of the article: I have nothing Kevin Strickland will soon be freed, but won't get a dime from Missouri. And this was updated November 23rd, 2021. Okay, and then also read the one from the Washington Post. Kevin Strickland exonerated after 43 years in one of the longest wrongful convictions in U.S. history. Okay, that's just convicted by an all-white jury in the 1978 triple murder. He was convicted in 1979. And then you read this and you have, let's see, with okay, fourth or fifth paragraph. Okay, he was convicted of the murders in 1978, even though no physical evidence linked him to the crime scene. Even though no physical evidence linked him to the crime scene, he was just railroaded. His family members provided alibis, and the admitted killers said he was not there. And the admitted killers said he was not there. The case was built on the testimony of Cynthia Douglas, the sole survivor of the murders, and eyewitness. Okay, she was the sole survivor of the murders and the sole eyewitness. She later attempted multiple times to recant her testimony because she said she was pressured by police. Okay, so you have that one, and then the one from Kansas City Star, and this one here has the link to the fundraiser for Kevin Strickland. Okay, so you can donate to that if you want to. I'm going to donate to it. It's just, and the laws in Missouri have to be changed so that prisoners who are wrongfully convicted like this and then exonerated, they can get compensation. Okay, all right, let's go to this next story. Okay, so 4 African-American men exonerated, or this is another exoneration case. Okay, now these brothers have passed away. The Groveland Four. I posted an article about this on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, on Monday. And they were wrongfully accused of a rape of a white woman in 1949 in Florida. Okay, so if you know anything about the history of Florida, I mean, just Jackie Robinson was chased out of Sanford, Florida. And Florida was probably the first state to have poll taxes. That was 1889. That was even before Mississippi got poll taxes. Mississippi got poll taxes in 1890 at the Mississippi State Convention, where they rewrote the Constitution, the Mississippi State Constitution, to suppress the African American vote. The Groveland Four. The black men accused in 1949 get case dismissed. A hearing in Florida to toss the Jim Crow era convictions of Charles Greenlee, Walter Irvin, Samuel Shepard, and Ernest Thomas resulted in a rare finding. Here's a picture here. This is from 1949. This is from left. Okay, so you have Lake County Sheriff Willis McCall. Okay, from left, Lake County Sheriff Willis McCall, white. and an unidentified man stand next to Walter Irvin, Samuel Shepard, and Charles Greenlee in Florida in 1949. So they were wrongfully convicted of the rape of a white woman. In the summer of 1949, a 17-year-old lodged an accusation that would thrust the rural Florida community of Groveland into decades-long turmoil. A white teenager told police she and her husband were driving home from a dance when they were attacked by 4 young black men who abducted and raped her at gunpoint. The claims made by Norma Paget, who is now in her 80s, set off a manhunt that spurred an onslaught of violence against African-American residents in Groveland near Orlando, Florida. Now, you know what happened in Florida in 1923, January 1923 in Rosewood, right? And that was that they destroyed the town of Rosewood, Florida. These white people destroyed the town of Rosewood, Florida, looking for a fictitious black man because a white woman lied and said that a black man broke into her house and assaulted her. Now, she didn't say he sexually assaulted her, but once it got relayed to the good old boys, they interpreted it as she was sexually assaulted. But what happened was she was cheating on her husband with another white man, and her white lover beat her behind, and she lied and said it was an African-American man who did it. So they go, and nearby there was a Klan convention taking place. So these white people come into the town of Rosewood, Florida. It's about population about 200 people, almost all African Americans except for the general store owner. And they kill a number of African Americans, hunt them down, trying to find this fictitious black man, burn houses, things like this. But they ran the African Americans out of town. They left their belongings, left their land, left their homes behind. And the town of Rosewood, Florida was wiped off of the map. When you study Rosewood and what happened, white people removed Rosewood, Florida from the map and took these African Americans' property also. It wasn't until decades later that the survivors were able to get some type of compensation, led by Arnett Doctor. Arnett Doctor. So the movie Rosewood, directed by John Singleton, starring Ving Rhames. The movie is really different than like the real history of Rosewood. I've done a presentation on like the real history of Rosewood, comparing it to the movie. But long story short, because I have a whole nother segment to get to, it's going to be decades later that the survivors are able to get some type of compensation, led by Arnett Doctor. That was his name, Arnett Doctor. He's portrayed in the movie. He was a little boy in the movie. And then the character that Ving Rhames plays, the character of Man, M-A-N-N, Man doesn't even exist. He's a fictitious character. He's probably a composite character. He's probably a composite of real people in their actions, just compiled into one character. But the character of Man, when you actually study the history of the Rosewood Massacre, Man doesn't even exist. Okay. So let's continue here. So the claims made by Norma Paget, who is now 80 years old, set off a manhunt that spurred an onslaught of violence against African-American residents of Groveland, Florida, near Orlando, mobilizing the National Guard and prompting Thurgood Marshall, then a lead attorney for the NAACP, to take up the cause of the men who would come to be known as the Groveland Four. The men who would come to be known as the Groveland Four. Now, there was a, let me see, I'm going to see if we can get to this here. There was a segment from, I think, Black News Tonight, where they talk about the Groveland Four. And I'm going to try to pull up that clip here. Let's see here. Let me get to that. Okay, I need to go into, I think I had a bookmark. Let's try to pull this up. I thought I saw a clip on that. Okay, we'll come back to this. All right, I'll come back to that. Now, okay, let's continue. It took 7 decades. It took 7 decades before the state of Florida formally recognized how the four accused, Charles Greenlee, Walter Irvin, Samuel Shepard, and Ernest Thomas, were failed by the criminal justice system. It took 7 decades. Ernest Thomas was gunned down by a mob in the wake of Norma Paget's allegations, and the others also since died. Governor Ron DeSantis, who some people, I think they call him Ron DeSatan, because he does some devilish things. Governor Ron DeSantis issued the Groveland Four a posthumous pardon. Bless his heart. But Monday morning, a circuit court judge in Lake County went further, clearing the charges against the men and issuing a ruling that effectively exonerated them of the crime. Issuing a ruling that effectively exonerated them of the crime. Bill Gladson, a local prosecutor, set the extraordinary move into motion last month when he filed paperwork to toss Thomas and Shepard's indictments and set aside the sentences and judgments imposed on Greenlee and Irvin. Quote, "We followed the evidence to see where it led us. We followed the evidence to see where it led us." Gladson said at a news conference following the judge's decision. Now, Carol Greenlee, the daughter of Charles Greenlee, who at 16 years old was the youngest of the suspects, wept and fell into the arms of those next to her as a judge formally dismissed the charges. She said, "If you know something is right, stand up for it." She said later of the lesson she learned, be persistent. Now, in an earlier statement, Carol Greenlee said that despite proclamations from the governor and the state legislature and a monument dedicated in honor of the Groveland Four, the families were awaiting, quote unquote, full justice. The families were awaiting full justice from the judicial branch to feel vindicated. The families were waiting full justice from the judicial branch, the courts, to feel vindicated. Among those who traveled to Florida to witness the court's decision was Marshall's son, Thurgood Marshall Jr. Okay, Thurgood Marshall's son, Thurgood Marshall Jr. And let me see here. Over. Okay. Quote, there are countless people we need to remember who suffered similar fates who have been lost to history, end quote, Thurgood Marshall Jr. said at the news conference. Quote, perhaps all of the cases my father worked on, perhaps of all the cases my father worked on, this one haunted him for many, many years. Perhaps of all the cases my father worked on, this one haunted him for many, many years, and he believed there were better days ahead, end quote. Now, the Groveland Four became a disturbing example of racial injustice from the Jim Crow era and preceded the high-profile lynching of Emmett Till, who was 14 years old, who was lynched in Mississippi in 1955 by J.W. Millam and Roy Bryant after he was accused of whistling at a white woman. Such incidents show how the desire to protect white women was used to justify racism and the oppression of African Americans' rights, said Gilbert King, whose book Devil in the Grove, which investigated the Groveland Four case and won the Pulitzer Prize for nonfiction in 2013. Okay, in 2013. And let me put this up here. Groveland Four. Change the caption. All right. Now, okay, let's continue here. Okay, so Bill Gladson's appeal to ask a judge to dismiss charges against the Groveland Four was not based on whether Norma Paget may be lying, King said, but rather on the prosecutorial misconduct in the fabrication of evidence at the time. Rather on the prosecutorial misconduct and the fabrication of evidence at the time. Now, Norma Paget had said the couple's car had stalled as they drove home from the dance when they were confronted by four African-American men who attacked her husband before abducting and raping her. Following her accusations, a mob of hundreds of white men led by Lake County Sheriff Willis McCall, and Willis McCall is on the left here in the picture. Following her accusations, a mob of hundreds of white men led by Lake County Sheriff Willis McCall tracked Thomas to a swamp. That was Ernest Thomas. Tracked Ernest Thomas to a swamp where they found him asleep and shot him more than 400 times. They tracked, led by this good old boy sheriff, Lake County Sheriff Willis McCall. They tracked them to Ernest Thomas, who was in a swamp. where they found Ernest Thomas asleep, and they shot him more than 400 times. Meanwhile, Charles Greenlee, Irvin, and Shepard, Walter Irvin, Charles Greenlee, Walter Irvin, and Samuel Shepard were arrested and later convicted by all-white juries. Like Kevin Strickland had an all-white jury. And the Michael Bryan murder trial, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, they have an almost all-white jury. It's basically 11 white people and 1 African-American. Now, Thurgood Marshall, who years later became the first African-American Supreme Court justice, had helped Irvin and Shepard win appeals to their to have their cases retried. Okay, Walter Irvin and Samuel Shepard. In 1951, while Walter Irvin and Samuel Shepard were being transported, McCall shot the men. Okay, the sheriff, Lake County Sheriff Willis McCall. McCall shot the men, claiming they tried to escape. Now, Samuel Shepard, a World War II veteran, was killed, but Irvin survived and was convicted, even though an FBI agent testified that prosecutors manufactured evidence against them. Now, here's a picture. Relatives of the Groveland Four, including Carol Greenlee, on the right, at a monument that was unveiled in front of the old Lake County Courthouse in Tavares, Florida, on February 21st, 2020. And it shows a picture here. It says in memory of the Groveland Four. Okay, but it shows a picture here. So Carol Greenlee's on the right. Now, there's a, let me see. Hold on, there's a clip I wanted to go to. Just 1 second. Let me see if I can find this. I saw it when I was preparing for the show. Oh, okay, this clip right here. What is this? Okay, this is from Charles Blow's show. Could Groveland Four exoneration lead to more? Could Groveland Four exoneration lead to more exonerations? Okay, let's see. Let's cue this up just a second. I want to go to this clip here. All right. Let's cue this up. Okay. Stand by. We'll take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
Mental health and well-being have long been a taboo subject in the so-called African-American community. So I enlisted the help of mental health experts, thought leaders, and activists to help kill the ghost of Willie Lynch and heal from post-traumatic slave syndrome.
We experience trauma a lot of times on a subconscious level. So sometimes something happens to us and we know that is traumatizing, but we don't really recognize the extent of the trauma.
We are emotionally constipated and emotionally obese because, again, all the things that we experienced in childhood, we've suffocated and we stored in our bodies.
It's a time to kill, and it's a time to heal. We've been haunted by the ghost of Willie Lynch and his doctrine of self-refueling trauma for too long. It's time for Willie to die. Die, Willie.
Stop Speed the Ghost LOXD block. It's time to kill the ghost of Willie Lynch and get out the matrix. Check out my man Ron Life Speaks at diewillie.com.
In July of 1949, a white woman wrongfully accused 3 black men and 1 teenager in a case that came to be known as the Groveland Four. Charles Greenlee, Walter Irving, and Samuel Shepard were arrested and convicted by an all-white jury. The 4th, Ernest Thomas, was murdered by a mob led by the Lake County Sheriff shortly after the accusations. They shot him over 400 times. The false claims made by Norma Padgett, who is now in her 80s, caused terror to rain down on the black residents of Groveland, prompting an intervention by the National Guard. According to recent interviews with the grandson of the now deceased prosecutor, both the local prosecutor and the judge knew that there was never a rape. Today, more than 70 years later, all 4 men have been exonerated. A circuit court judge in Florida cleared the cases against the men and issued a posthumous ruling, an attempt at a loan for one of the worst miscarriages of justice of the Jim Crow era. But none of the men were alive to see it. After the Supreme Court overturned the original convictions in 1951, the same local sheriff fatally shot Shepard and wounded Irving as he drove them to the second trial. Irving, a World War II veteran, died 1 year after he was paroled in 1968. Greenlee, who was 16 years old when he was convicted, died in 2012. All 4 of their families gathered at the hearing and celebrated the ruling. My next guest helped inspire the re-examination of the case with his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Devil in the Grove. Joining me now to discuss is Gilbert King. Gilbert, I really wanted to have that book. I have it here somewhere on this bookshelf, but I can't find it.
No worries.
Anyway, so I want to just get your opinion of what has happened here today and the exonerations.
Yeah, sure. You know, it was an amazing day. I've got to be with the family over the years for the apology, the pardon, and today the exonerations. And, you know, it was a long time coming. And these families have been so patient over 72 years. I mean, Carol Greenlee, the daughter of Charles Greenlee, was born the day or the year, the same year of the conviction. And so every year it marks another milestone, and 72 years have passed. And she knew that her father was innocent of this accusation and this crime. And I think just to see her smile and her reaction to the judge's decision today made everything worthwhile, because it just showed this bottled up dream of just being exonerated and what that feels like.
Right. It's really important to the families, as you say, to the people who are convicted or charged, if they are still alive. How important do you think it is, however, to society overall that we revisit these injustices, and even if the people are not around, that we make it right?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think about it all the time. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, it's hard to just imagine these families going back home and saying, yes, we've got these exonerations, but we lost these lives. This is not coming back. That whole life was just destroyed. And in effect, it destroyed families, multiple victims over the years. But here's why it's important. I think it's important for these states like Florida, and I really do commend the state of Florida for doing this, because not every state has done this. Not every state has been aggressively pursuing these these kind of injustices and trying to make a correction, I think it improves the integrity and the accountability of the criminal justice system. If you can have a state attorney's office or a prosecutorial office look back and say, we got this wrong, we admit it, it just improves the credibility going forward. You want to have the integrity of the criminal justice system. And it's a really good start to recognize some of these cases that were just abominations of justice. And as soon as you start doing that and recognizing that this happened in the past, you can start to identify the similar cases in the present. And one of the things I've learned on this entire journey is that prosecutors have heart too. And sometimes they're the first line of defense. And they make a difference, and no one's going to write a book about that.
Right. So among the 375 people who have been exonerated in this country, 60% of them have been black, according to the Innocence Project. What do you make of that incredible imbalance?
You know, to me, it's just like, look at American history, and you go back until the days after the Civil War, when this country tried to get through Reconstruction, and what they decided was, since America had lost interest, they won the war, they didn't want to talk about this, we wanted America to repair, they allowed the South to create this criminal justice system that really blurred the lines between white supremacists, Klansmen, and law enforcement. And from that day, you had the birth of mass incarceration and this racial narrative that has crept into law enforcement that exists to this day. And so, to me, that is the legacy. This is what these cases from the past really expose. And this is a problem for America because we have way too many people in prison, and it's disproportionate to the rest of the world, and it's because it's built on this original sin of American slavery, and that's where we are today.